Composing Gloves here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this wonderful sound. And my reference was this. Now my attack and the way I shape noise isn't the same. I also have a version of it layered in with noise. Now the noise could use a ton of work, but the general sculpt of the sound is getting a lot closer to what this is. I just got tired of working on it. I was like, I don't even care that much about making that same sound. I just want my own cool sound. So what the idea is, let's talk about overarching idea. Like if you're gonna sit down and say, okay, let's make something like that sound, how are you gonna do it? Well, I'm gonna do it by sitting down, and first I'm gonna listen to the attack phase, the ADSR envelope, the volume of the sound over time. That's what I meant to say. So volume over time. And as I'm listening to this volume over time, I'm like, oh, I take some notes of the frequency at the attack. And you see there's clearly like what sounds like some noise. It's like, and it tends to be like this like dragged out line and then sudden drop, like bum, 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 bum. But there's some drop, and you can hear reverb everywhere in the background, and that's a result of the track and the way it was mixed and whatever reverbs they used. So I'm not going to go to great lengths to remake that. I'm like, that's just toss some reverb on it. So what I decided to do was first level of sound is like, I'm going to first, let's start with 1. So I just turned off side B. You do notice that this is a side B scenario. We see here that this is the envelope I settled on. So originally I had a pluck envelope, but it was like, da, 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 and I was like, that's not quite what I want. I want something that goes, womp, 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 but like super fast, to the point where it's like, nah, 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 but it has like a swoop at the beginning, if that makes any sense. So I just turned off B so we could look at A, and then I had to like pick a waveform, and I use EQ quite heavily here. And I EQ very specifically for the range I'm playing in, because it does, this EQ, any EQ, it'll change depending on where your frequency is, right? So when you play different notes, the way you structure your EQ is really important. This is one of the things that as I did more of these, I began to learn, is creating an EQ only works for like one note. As soon as you play notes down here, the EQ moves that you're making that are frequency specific, that technically should follow the sound around. Like if I was playing a clarinet, those changes and nuances would move down in ways that would match their predecessors, or at least ways that were related to the changes that were going on in this frequency spectrum. But with an EQ, this is like a static change. So if you look at here, if I play a C, you see that it's moving up, wop, 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 and it's going through this little increase in gain as the sound progresses, because the pitch is moving in this sound. This means that if I play that same note anywhere else, I'm going to experience a different amount of gain, but I have the struggle of trying to achieve a spectral balance, right? I want to create the same profile as this sound. So this is one of the drawbacks to trying to just sort of brute force your way into creating the sound, is you run into crap like this. And I have that on my B sound as well. That in the B. Now, B is a lot closer or spectral frequency-wise. It doesn't sound like it, but when they're combined, it's like a crucial relationship. And so you might be going, how do you decide like what EQ boosts and cuts are you going to do? And the answer is a lot of experiments. And if I listen to the original sound, it's got like this nasally quality. And so I was like, oh yeah, definitely you can hear white noise clear as day. It's like, so I could probably go a little bit easier on the envelope with my noise, but we'll get to the noise in a little bit later. So anyways, that's the idea behind the profile. So I'm trying to set up this profile, and I also, so over here, I'm setting up a different profile, and I'm just going through over and over and over. And the reason why I brought in part B, and it becomes this big complicated patch the further I get into it, because I'm trying to match whatever patch this is. The reason I bring in part B is because I just could not get the tone I wanted. And you notice that A has been tuned up by 0.5 on the frequency dial here. So it's been tuned up by 0.5, half an octave. And that's really important, because if you listen to this sound, this is something that I was just like, that's probably, sounds like it's in the sound. Sounds like there's a harmony going on. So it's like, it sounds like a power chord. So I was like, okay, I'll turn this one up by 0.5. If I turn, if I have them the same octave, so if I have them both at plane 1, it's missing that relationship, which is like, that's a bigger element of the sound. So it's like, gotta have that relationship. And as you can see, it immediately sounds way closer. So got to have that. That's a really important thing. That's the spectrum. And if I listen to the spectrum, I didn't look at a spectrogram or anything. I just listened. I was like, oh, it's got like this. It sounds like it's got higher harmonics going on. It definitely sounds like something that's got some unison or some chorus or something. I went with unison, but you could accomplish similar things with a chorus. And so I'm listening to this and I say, okay, it sounds like they're emphasizing particular areas of resonance in the higher harmonics. And small changes here can make quite a large difference depending on what note you're playing. So right now, check this out. That's like a whole world of difference. That one move. So you want to be aware of stuff like that. So that's another reason why these things can be so challenging. And that's just one little piece of it. If I play different notes and make similar adjustments elsewhere, even tiny, minute adjustments, the sound changes a ton. There are reasons for this. We're changing the way the harmonics sum. And because it's an additive synth, we have unusual control over this and a whole bunch of other things. So anyways, that's some more on the spectrum thing. I went through the same process here, trying to basically find movements and gain that made sense with the sound and also met up with the spectral requirements as the sound progresses. And this is where I ran into Harmor is not the most friendly for noise generation if I'm using both A and B. And I was using both A and B because I needed this. So this is where I was like, they probably used a synth that had multiple oscillators. In fact, I mean, massive. Massive would probably be a better synth to do this in. But I was working in Harmor already, so what do? I'm a wise guy, and I pull open a Citrus. And the reason, if you didn't catch that, is because I'm already using both side A and side B to generate a second voice that has these settings, and I'm able to manipulate this voice. So I was like, I don't want to sacrifice what I've done here. So I went over to here and said, and this is really simple. I was like, listen, there's clearly noise. So I went to operator 1 and just turned on the noise. I was like, cool. I sent it to the filter. And on noise, it doesn't matter what pitch you hit. It's always going to sound like noise. So you just take the noise thing, go, and now it's going to be white noise galore. Sent it to the filter, filtered it, took out the low, and adjusted the cutoff. And on the noise, I inserted an envelope of this nature. It'd probably sound better if I had something closer to this. Maybe a small decay, a bit of sustain. Because if you listen to how much noise is blatantly blaring in theirs noise sounds like it's been filtered on the high end. So take this down. But this is something, see, you'd get in here and you'd nuance the filters and whatever you want to do. Change the filter type, see if that does anything. And that's going out here. Now, my effects, I just realized it's going through a chorus, which is why it was varying before. So yeah, so it's just some noise, layered it in there. You can hear it in theirs. I could probably brighten the noise up actually a little bit after taking the chorus away. But okay, so we've gone through, we've picked out our general idea. How do you pick your waveforms? I knew it had to be some sort of a saw wave with an unusual resonance build from the spectrum. I ended up settling on this sort of, so this is technically 3/4 saw, 1/4 square. So the mix starts out here, right? And that'd be like an even blend of them in fade mode. And what I did was I turned it 1/4 to the saw. So now it's 1/4 more saw than it was square. So that makes it 3/4 saw, 1/4 square. I don't know. I turned it this way. I was experimenting with sounds. At this point, small adjustments here are not really audible. If you did large sweeping changes all the way to like saw or square, it'd be a little more, but because it's part of a layer and I've shaped both spectrums, it's a little more encoded. But you want to be careful about steps like this, because getting this step right can make a huge difference later on. This is going to go through all the processing, and getting the idea of what it's going to sound like is really important. So just don't underestimate this for a workflow reason. Like, sure, now it's not making so big a difference, but at the beginning it's kind of making a big difference. You'll notice here I have some high passes on these, but they're pretty much off. I was experimenting with an idea and it didn't work out. You'll also notice the pluck is on. These are making small adjustments to the sound, but they're nothing enormous. They were there because I was trying another idea that also didn't work out. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But you will notice that both the unison is at 6 and they're pretty much perfectly the same. This is a workflow thing I like to do with Harmor. If I'm working with two pieces, I will turn on the parts link, adjust one knob if I want the knob to be the same on both parts. The problem is you got to remember to turn this off if you have other controls that are separate. Okay, I had a weird thing in my chest there, but it's gone now. So I want my controls to be separate sometimes, so I'll turn them off. But in this case, I wanted my unison to be the same. I wanted them to have the same settings. This isn't a big deal, but I noticed a change in character that mattered. And so, I mean, I could try varying them. It gets a lot more complex. So I just wanted him to have the same number of voices and the same pitch settings and so forth. Now, the number of unison voices is ultra important here. I settled on 6, but you'll notice that each one carries with it its own characteristic sound. So I'm going to turn on parts link. And so if we play our sound, okay, let's go ahead and change it to 5. And you see now, you might be going, there's like hardly any difference. But listen to the reverb. There's like this metallic overtone series ringing going on. That kind of ruins the sound for me. If we go to 6, it changes them so that they're not harmonically related just by adding that extra voice. And I really like that. If we go to, let's go to 7 or 9. And see, that didn't sound quite right. So I'm sitting here going, oh, okay, do this, do that. You notice this also flashes. It's not very, very flashy, but it flashes to let you know your parts are linked. And so I'm changing both voices. Now, the phase knob. Check out what the phase can do for you. So here's our sound. That is like a huge difference in my book. Let's go back. I don't want to lose where I was. Oh, man. Did I lose where I was? Let me try hitting Control Z. I think I did. No, I didn't. Yes. Yeah. Lots of undos. Okay. Let's try going up. That's a massive difference too. Like, it's just going to alter the beginning parts of your sound. And when you have a clear goal, that can be like something detrimental to your sound. But phase offers enormous power over coloration. So I sat here forever messing with just these 3 settings. The pitch is another pain too. Like, if you move the pitch, everything changes here too. That's just because we have all these voices, and the phase and the way you pitch detune them and all this other stuff is critically important. Also, another thing that stands in our way is the pan slider. Every parameter has its thing. And I didn't even go in here. I mean, imagine if I'd gone in there. It would have been just even more of a mess. But the panning would change the way they sum. So this will sound mega different in mono than it will in stereo. So if you're listening to this over your phone, I may sound way off compared to how it would sound in mono, because the differences would be magnified than it would sound in stereo. So, because your phone, unless you have a really, really fancy phone, your phone's in mono. So it's like, anyways, that's the point there. So as you see, there's just a huge number of things going on. So yeah, and I do think about all these things when I'm aiming for a sound. When I'm just making a cool sound, I don't give a living crap about most of these like crazy, ridiculous thoughts. I just go, I'm gonna do this and find a cool sound that I like and move on with my life. It's a lot easier. So anyways, we went through the unison, and so I was like, okay, cool. One thing that I didn't cover that is sort of a base idea that I messed with a lot. So we looked at the volume, and I said, okay, I want this sustain right here, and then a very quick release, and that's the same on both. You notice this one's more of a pluck sound, but it worked out. Again, just a result of experimentation. And then I said, all right, let's go over to the pitch setting. And you notice I have these bends, and I believe they match. Nope, they don't match. But you see here I have this bend setting. This is really important for the attack phase. It's such a short bend, but if I get rid of it, if I go to parts link and deactivate them. Oh, you know what? I don't think parts link will deactivate both sides. Yep, there you go. Which sounds a ton like lots of pluck sounds I've heard in the Vengeance sample pack, where I'm like, oh man, I can make these sounds now. How great is that? Like, good for me wasting money. But anyways, I added this because I liked the want a little bit more. But you may be a fan of the other way. Like, that apparently it's quite popular for it to be in one of their packs. But who knows? I guess that's not really a good measurement of popularity. So that was another thing. I messed with this a ton. I went down, I went up. If you change it to going down, it sounds quite different. A whole bunch of options you have there that you can mess with it. Go ahead, make your own patch and share it with us. I went with soft saturation. If we turn it off, it affects mostly the high harmonics. If we turn it back on, and I messed with a huge number of settings here too, but it affects mostly high harmonics. And yeah, so that's cool. I went into reverb, added the reverb. I turned up, I think I actually turned down the decay in the end. That's because I went through some posts, which with dynamics are for noobs. So I just boosted the living snot out of it, added some saturation because I wanted it to sound crazily overcompressed and enormous like theirs. And then also, because theirs has been like mastered and stuff, so assumedly. And then we have Who Needs Headroom, which is shaping. If I get rid of these, actually the sound changes quite a bit too. As you see, my balance is shifted. And so I was fixing balance the whole time, and then I came in here and did this, and then I went back and adjusted again. I see balance is restored in the universe. This is something that I find with these sort of tracks. I'll oftentimes go back and mix things just a little bit more after I've done my mastering chain, and just to get a feel for it. Some people will mix with their mastering chain active. I'm against this because of a number of other reasons. For headroom, just go check out the mixing series on my YouTube channel. Just check that out. That'll explain a lot of those, because those are really complicated sort of topics that a lot of people think they know a lot about, and then sometimes you really do, and we can have an interesting discussion. Other times it's just people regurgitating what other people have told them. So yeah, just please at least have read some books on the subject or something. Don't just repeat what other people say. Have some experience, that sort of thing. Anyways, I digress. So I went through here. If you're wondering what this is, just gain, saturation. I'm bringing up the dynamics. Here I am not doing anything fancy. I took away the attack here. Just sort of as a, I don't know. Sometimes you open up a plugin, you feel like you need to turn the knobs. But anyways, I'm bringing up the mids, which is quite a dramatic change for the sound. And I brought up the highs a little bit. And that's why when I take this away, it sounds a lot more dull. Or it's just not got the correct profile. It's a lot closer to this sound with this on, in my opinion. Okay, so that's what's going on there. So we come back in here. So we've dealt with our settings here, and the saturation's doing its thing. Added some reverb. You notice I have some compression in here. This compression is a little bit of the mids and highs, similar to what I did here to try and get, again, the same profile, which I was also chasing with the EQs and just a whole load of mess. But I did a couple things in the advanced tab. First, I moved reverb. I forgot where it is by default, but I ended up moving it all the way to the back, because distortion and reverb don't play well, and I was experimenting with it. Usually some sounds they play really well, but not in this sound, because it's long, big reverb, so not a good thing. So I sent it through here, and the reverb in the plug's important because that gets sent through these. And so I had to come in here and adjust my reverb settings, which is why I brought the decay down, so that when I brought it up, it wouldn't sound overwhelmingly huge. Theirs actually has more reverb, but I decided to leave it. I didn't want to go to the trouble of remaking the whole track. Like, I do not have enough time to do that. I have like a full load right now. So I did that, and then I was like, cool. I changed the compression. I'm not sure. Well, I need to just look up where these are by default. But anyways, distortion, compression, reverb. That's the signal chain I wanted, because the compression I did not want. Okay, I experimented with it, and I found something I wanted. I don't want a compressed signal going into a distortion plug, because that would greatly, first of all, that would change dramatically how the distortion plug reacted. So I had already worked so hard, I didn't want to undo any of that work. But also, you're sending in, it's going to be a lot more confined on the distortion setting. So whatever distortion plugin you're using, if it's not linear, if it depends on volume, if I open up a wave shaper, I can show you what I'm talking about. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so here's a wave shaper, right? And if I were to have some distortion setting, like this, well, if I sent in a compressed signal, and we're talking about like traditional compression, it's been reduced in dynamic range. So only from like here to here. Let's say that my signal is here, but originally my signal would vary from here to here. And so like I would have a much wider variety of distortion happening versus here and here. And I just didn't want to introduce that sort of stuff into what I was doing here. However, Harmer's distortion, soft saturation and things like that, they tend to have a rather uniform sound across the sound. They don't, when I notice that when I give them heavy levels, they don't do anything insanely wild. Like, they're not super fancy like that. So they're kind of like trustworthy ways of getting particular timbres out. Like log, like cube sounds pretty much always like cube, and log sounds like log. Like, I haven't really given it a sound and been like, whoa, I did not see that coming, just because I've used it so much. So maybe that's part of that, but I don't think they have like crazy amounts of variation going on inside, as you would get with a wave shaper. That's why you have a wave shaper. So if you do want to do that, you can go in there and grab that. But that's one reason why my compression is after my distortion. So I'm taking my distortion signal and doing it in this way. I don't have to have the two fight. So anyways, that's the sound for the most part. Like that, I know that's a lot of words, but I wanted to give you some concepts and ideas. I just settled on the note C for the designing of this sound, but I was playing around with other notes, and I have been playing a lot more piano recently. I'm currently learning Gershwin's Prelude 3. It's actually 3 preludes, and I'm learning the third one because that's my favorite one. The first one's really cool too. Second one's cool. It's not as cool as the first one, and the first one's not as cool as the third one, my humble opinion. But I think they're all awesome, and I'm trying to learn the third one right now. But it's interesting going from that to this and back and forth. Like you're playing, like you're sight reading like songs, and then all of a sudden you're like making sounds that make no sense to play in the context of a piano. But yeah, just really fun stuff. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.